I'm Carrie, the with Benton County neighborhood leader, and not here, but here in spirit, I'm pretty sure are Linda Ramsey and Carol Truba. Nancy.
And I am Nancy, the Lynn County side of things, with Brenda Sterner and Steve Harbert, who did catch salmon, and Mark Leonard and Susan Leonard, who always takes us through what people said.
Lots of things to say, and all this stuff that we know is coming up right now. Figs, tomatoes, eggplants, green beans, fresh pesto, cucumbers, peaches, one of my favorites, blueberries, corn, dahlias and roses, zucchini. And I have to say, for me, I'm most excited about my 5 feet tall stargazer lilies. Here's one of them. I have at least 50 of these blossoms. So when you walk out my front door, it just smells heavenly. Ah, there's a beautiful gladiola Graham has up. So yeah, thank you everyone for adding
And
your
and
bit.
and so and Dave, 22 kinds of dahlias and 25 kinds of roses. I mean, that's like, wow. Now, we're going to have an event at your house, pretty much. Okay, because now you've outed yourself. Okay, welcome. We thought, things being a little heavy in the world, we'd start out a little bit lighter. And we are going to dive right in. So, um, our agenda is welcome and, well, it was more what's in our gardens or in our like pantries. And we do have some quotes, as always. We have some quotes, and one of them, we're going to break the mold a little bit and actually talk about it. Then we're going to look there a brief timeline. Basically, it's in the slideshow, and it will give you the dates about the election, because really we're focusing on um, how do we win elections and promote the vision and values of the country we want? And last time we visioned, and so we'll do a real quick review of some main points we came up with. And we're really going to spend this time talking about how do we strategically communicate those visions and values in a range of situations. Okay. And really it's how do we not walk away from an interaction thinking, dang, why didn't I think of what to say in that moment? So we'll do our best. Brenda.
Patria. This is an incredible poem. You do not love her less when her skirts are torn, her standard bloody, dragging in the mud, her ankles fettered, chafed, her eyes cast down, her ghoulish captors dancing her defeat. This is the time, instead, to love her more, with all the fervency of desperate hope, which sees beyond the black horizon fire that may be battle or the burst of dawn, by Keith Boynton.
Wow. Thank you.
So this is a long quote from Jennifer Rubin, who writes in The Contrarian, and I will read the whole thing. And then after that, there's some things in this that may be somewhat controversial to some of you. So we'll have a little discussion after. Progressives and moderates in the party need to lower the temperature in internecine debates and conduct substantive discussions on the best means of attaining common goals. Moderates have been too cautious in response to demands for change, while the far left have been too dismissive of concerns about immigration and crime. Unlike the MAGA cult, Democrats must tolerate a range of views to build a governing coalition. The urgent need to unify behind the common goal of dislodging a neo-fascist party from power must take precedence over every internal squabble. Frankly, if safe blue districts want super progressive representatives, the rest of the party should not care. If moderate Democrats have the best shot to win back swing seats, they should prevail in primaries. Democrats must convince millions of qualified but as yet non-voting Americans to dispense with the fictions that both parties are the same or that their vote won't make a difference. The choice now is not Democrat versus Republican or progressive versus conservative. It is right versus wrong, humane versus cruel. Tens of millions of people will be harmed by this cruel legislation. Tens of millions more will know someone who will be harmed. They are not just victims and witnesses, but foot soldiers in the battle to hold to account Republican tormentors. It's a lot of heavy ideas there. Anybody have some feedback or something to a question or something they'd like to add? Go ahead and just unmute yourself.
Can you
So-
see, can you see my sign in the background?
Where are you?
Right there. Here I am.
Ah, I
Dave,
can't
no,
read
too
it. What
far.
does it say, David?
I'll get it.
Okay.
And so we thought we would give people a chance to respond. Yes.
Yeah, right. We have a dream. I think many of us have that dream. I
Man,
saw
handcuffed.
today that Spotify has put out a playlist for when we get the news of Trump's demise. Any other ideas about,
The word neo-fascist came up and a number of people on tonight were at the Dare to Fight Fascism demonstration in Lebanon yesterday. There were nearly 80 people. I asked two questions of, it wasn't very scientific, but I asked two questions. Has our federal government, are we, let me see, how did I phrase it? We asked 20 if they thought our federal government was, which is dominated, which has been hijacked by the executive branch, has been moving toward fascism or already there. Of the 28 people, 14 said moving toward, 14 said already there. And then we asked, how do you counteract it? How do you fight it? And, you know, they pointed out to the street and what they're doing there, the honking waves that they're doing and the what Indivisible teaming up with 50-51, teaming up with Democrats and like, you know, partner with other like-minded folks, give young people hope that things can be better. What else? One woman said, if Congress and the Supreme Court did their job, we'd stop it on a dime.
Amen.
And then voting for everybody we can get behind, you know, that we don't have to, just with this, what you just read.
one thing I've thought about is that there is a kind of a rift, and I don't want to make this a young versus old issue. It may be more true of younger people, but not necessarily, that there are some people who think we should be ultra progressive, far to the left. And if a legislator is not taking that stance, then perhaps we should primary them and try to get someone who's stronger on what we want. And the counter to that is we need to hold all of our seats. And in some districts, a far left candidate may have less of a chance of being elected. So you have the balance between being strategic and being idealistic.
And I know that when we've talked about this and it's going to come up, this quote actually opens on to what we're going to be talking about and doing. And we read through it twice in our past two team meetings, and really it generated a lot of conversation. So we thought we would, as long as it is, keep it in, that regardless of who our electeds are, we're thinking about Democrats, it's our job to help them be the best representatives they can be, right? That fundamentally, that's that's our job. And I think, Graham, when you're talking about what people said yesterday, that's part of doing the job, right, Susan?
I think a lot of the problems that the Democrats have is not listening to their grassroots and having the messages that appeal to their grassroots. And I agree with the strategy with more purple districts, going with someone who might not be as far left, but I disagree with the immigration and crime. I think people are far more sympathetic about immigration. And I think polls have shown that people are supportive and turning out for their neighbors. And crime is actually down most places. So I don't think that that's as much of a concern unless you are someplace that crime has increased. And I also think that not listening to people about what's going on in Gaza has hurt the Democrats a lot also. So not fighting for things that our values stand for, I think, has been a problem. And I don't think some of those things are as left wing. I think they actually are very popular, like healthcare for all and increasing the minimum wage and things like that. And the Democrats need to have people that will fight for those types of policies and not capitulate. So that's just my thinking.
Yeah, good thoughts there, Susan. When we first read that end of that first paragraph, I believe it is where it talks about immigration and crime, that kind of stopped me too. It's like, what do they mean there? And we talked about that, and I think one of the things they might be referring to is that I think pretty obviously all of us here are opposed to ICE and to the terrible things happening to our immigrant population. But we've known for quite a long time that our immigration system is not working well. And the system needs to be improved in many ways to make it more humane. So, I think we have to be mindful of that issue being one that hasn't been clearly addressed for a long time, partly because some of the legislators had good ideas about improving it, and Trump made that all stop because he wanted it as an election issue.
And we did. It stopped us the two times we read it, exactly what you came on. And I think the other thing we said is that it says not to be dismissive. That is to engage. It's what you're saying, that we need to talk about things, right? So that we can have those conversations. Okay, anybody else? And well, Ruth, you're muted.
Yeah. So I think it's maybe also very important to talk about what we're for instead of what we're against all the time. We're against Trump or against this, we're against that, but what are we for? And I think we have to really make that message clear. And yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Excellent.
Hang on. I just got back from 2 weeks in England. And in the time I was in England, I did 25 Uber and taxi drivers. And in that entire time, there was only one person that thought Trump was good. Everybody else basically said, "What the hell is happening in the US? Where are all your minds?"
And did you say I have two words for you, Margaret Thatcher?
No, the one guy, he was in Wales. His name was Barry, and he was so opinionated. I mean, he loved Trump. He loved everybody. He hated every politician in the world. But some of the most intelligent people I had to talk with, there was a couple in London that were more plugged in with what's going on than most people that I talked to They just, they're flabbergasted at what's going on. It's unbelievable to them. We're
Wow.
messed up.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's like we need one issue, and that's to get rid of that possible person. All this other stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't matter unless we get rid of him. That's my opinion.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, Maria.
Yeah, circling back on that statement, I believe that one of the reasons why the left has failed so many times in so many countries is that we tend to be purist. We want everything to be moral, everything to be progressive, to consider all the population, to have everyone's needs met. And there are groups that are different that prioritize this and pretend not to see the rest. In a nutshell, we have the progressives, the left, and we have the middle, semi-conservative in one issues, but who can have a coalition with the most progressive. And that comes back to the issue of supporting elect more conservative Democrats in purplish districts. As much as I personally would not vote for a conservative Democrat, I see the strategy as something that we need to discuss and probably embrace if we want to be successful.
And however, my belief is, and if that's who is elected, step forward, all of us, and lean on them to be the best representatives they can be. Susan, and then Joanna.
Yeah, I just wanted to read a real interesting comment that Casey put in the chat. Buttigieg recently said in an interview that Mamdani's success was because of how he approached the issues. But I, and many millennials or younger, think that his success came from actually standing on further left progressive issues. Very interesting. And I haven't studied Mamdani's campaign closely, although I certainly read about it. But I would say it may be both of those things, kind of attracting maybe different groups of voters. I don't know. Casey, if you have something else to say about it, you're certainly welcome to.
We
And-
knocked on a lot of doors.
But the other thing, both. The issues, I don't know, if you call them far left or not, he talked about the fundamental issues that are challenging New Yorkers,
Right.
right? And yeah, Joanna, then Leslie. And then we're going to get back to slides.
Thank you. I want to build a little bit on what Casey was typing in the chat. I think it's important to maybe acknowledge or suggest, if people don't agree, that there has been a shift towards the right within our party. So I think it matters that we clarify what we mean when we talk about things that are ultra progressive. For example, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, healthcare for all was a mainstream issue. And that was rapidly dropped by Democrats. And, so I think that's important. And I think it matters what the issue is as well. So a year ago, being critical of Israel was unthinkable, right? That would have been considered something that was maybe ultra leftist. But now it is moving more towards the mainstream. So I think concrete language like that does require explanation, because just listening to the quote that Susan read, that seemed awfully reminiscent of our strategy in 2024, which was let's chase the Republicans towards the middle. And I know there are a lot of strong opinions about 2024, but I would suggest that in part had something to do with it. And that kind of relates to what Casey was saying, which was the success of Mamdani's campaigns was being unapologetic about his policies that were at one point not considered ultra progressive, but were actually more towards the mainstream.
Or and what this calls us, this conversation, to think about is labels, which are almost never useful, right? that if you label something ultra progressive, is affordability in New York ultra progressive? So
Exactly.
people can afford to pay for their housing, and you know, so you call it ultra progressive. It behooves us to be careful about repeating and amplifying that kind of labeling. Thank you. Leslie.
You're muted. Leslie, you need to unmute.
Leslie, you're muted. You're still muted somehow. Try pressing your space bar.
I think she's on a tablet or phone.
Oh,
I'm on a tablet or phone.
okay, there you go.
And I apologize. We're having this discussion in terms of progressive, middle of the road, which sort of is a binary sort of discussion. And I think that one of the things we have to try to understand in the party is how we've managed to lose communities that we used to think we had in the pocket because we were the only one on their side. And they have turned away from the party. A lot of people in the BIPOC communities of various kinds have turned away from the party. And I don't think they're thinking in terms of progressive versus middle of the road. I think they're thinking in terms of results and issues, specific issues. And so we can talk about, you know, right or left, middle, but we've got to think about issues a lot too. Something more detailed than just those labels.
Okay, so thank you all, and good conversation, because and this did okay, one more quote just to bring us back.
Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Do not become bitter or hostile. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. We will find a way to make a way out of no way. And that is, of course, Representative John Lewis.
And it's actually, you know, a good thing to read at this moment, because thinking about when John Lewis began his activism, in his world, things were definitely dark and could seem hopeless. And so just to keep that in mind. And what I was going to say is that what we're going to get to, and we're going to go through the next slides pretty quickly, is how do we talk about things, and give you a couple of some strategy and some examples, and then see what do we think about that. That does get away from labels. So again, these slides they're going to be in your slideshow. We've gone over them before, but they're relevant, so we keep it in. And obviously, networking and coalition building is important, and that does rest on how we find issues that we have in common in the broadest possible way. So this is just looking at what did we, in the last time when we talked about what is our vision for the country that we want, and some of the main points were broad engagement in civic life, especially younger people being engaged in civic life, and a true safety net, a new perspective on our enormous wealth that makes a basic standard of living a priority, harnessing the positivity of our historic identity as a nation of immigrants, encourage, engage, and to encourage and engage that constantly renewed energy. Needs some different punctuation there. Okay. Redefining patriotism to include championing all of those things. And again, lots of conversation last time, and that just teases out some of the main points. And to make this a reality, as we've been saying, we need to elect people who are not afraid to do fundamental remodeling of all the things that got us to the place we're in now. And a key part of this is our role in working to help our candidates be their best selves and do the right thing. So tonight's focus, communicating that vision to a range of audiences to broaden support and engagement, pushing back against what people have been talking about, who has been, who has turned away, who's been lost, how do we use conversation and our opportunities to find common ground and not necessarily to convince people of what I think, but to hear what other people are thinking and to see what comes of that. So we're going to look at who is our potential audience, what are effective strategies, and then begin to look at what does this look like in practice. So we've done a couple of role plays and we'll be very interested to see what you think of all of this. So when we brainstormed who's our audience, this is what we, the team, came up with. Overarching, anyone who cares. Young people who are being impacted by current conditions, and to reach out to this audience to build coalition and increase our partners. Our neighborhood leader voters to respond, to reframe, to encourage and empower. In other words, if people checking in with our voters, are people feeling hopeless, discouraged, how do we have those conversations? And then what Mark calls the persuadable electorate, and people say the middle or swing voters, who are disengaged and unaware, in order to engage them, to identify what's affecting them and what's happening to their benefit, and to identify a place to participate. And then people who may not identify with Democrats, but are definitely not in support of this federal administration, in order to build coalition with people you may meet at a street action, a town hall, etc. You all, who are we leaving off this list? Can stop sharing. Anybody? And, you know, if it comes to you later, no worries, just type it in the chat. Carrie.
So one of the people that I really admire and listen to a lot about communication is Anat Shenker Osorio. And her messaging strategy focuses on, she just says it very simply, mobilize the base and persuade the middle. That's what she tries to do in her communication, her communication studies. What's going to work to mobilize the people we count on and to persuade the people who are persuadable. It was just pretty broad brush.
Leslie. Leslie?
I want to thank the committee for doing all this great work. I think you've got a marvelous list there. But I also think that as time goes on, and people start to being hurt by of, you know, one issue or another, they're beginning to cite. I think that developing strategies that we have a conversation with them that doesn't blame them for creating this mess, skips that, and goes to their moment away from him and towards us.
Excellent. And my guess is now that you've said that, we'll be brainstorming and that may be a role play in the next Zoom. So stay tuned. So Carrie, I'm going to turn it over to you to go through this.
Okay, so we, talked a lot about, how to do different conversations and the challenge of thinking on your feet when you're engaged with somebody. And some of the things we came up with noting work that's been done by a lot of, or not a lot, but a few very well expressed academics and consultants on it, like the woman I just mentioned, Anat Shenker-Osorio. We put together just a few bullets of one potential approach, a structure to have for when you're in a conversation with somebody. And one is to start with a value that you can present as something that we all believe, or you establish as a value that you would presume, you would hope that we all would share. Making it personal so that it's clear why it matters to you, that you're not just repeating some talking point, but that this is a real on the ground issue that is affecting people like yourself. It is important sometimes to name how this happened and to name who's responsible. It's not necessarily, you don't lead with that. The order matters, but to make it clear who is responsible for the challenge to the issue you have, and then trying to end with something that is an action or that is hopeful, that is something we can do when we do it together. So because there's really it's counterproductive to leave people in despair, and we want to be working toward the country we want, and so to end with something where that person we can join together to work toward that shared value is really important. We're not out to convince somebody in just one conversation, but recognizing that we're one of many inputs that person will have, and hopefully we're a positive input that the cumulative effect will be important. It is important to, as we can, kind of connect the dots and help people see what's going on, see where it affects them and act. So just kind of like what Leslie was saying, to bring them, if necessary, to see how they are impacted and who is impacting them and what they can do about it. And most importantly, just from a better place to live, and from, I don't want to say cynical, but from the cold thing of votes, is to hopefully achieve a shared identity, some commonality, to grow who we think we are, the anti-fascist coalition, and it appeal to people to come be part of that coalition and fight the polarization that is the secret sauce in what we're fighting right now, is trying to drive people apart and scapegoat people, is to be the opposite of that and bring people together. One thing I'll just add, going back to what Ruth was saying earlier, it isn't that shared value is a really important way to say what we're for. And this woman that I listen to a lot, Anat Shenker-Osorio, she says, say what you're for, say what you're for, say what you're for. Defining yourself in the negative just reinforces the negative. And she makes a clear differentiation between that and the accountability, naming the villain. So you say, that positive thing, that what we all agree on coming first, and then being clear about why that value is under threat and who's responsible for that. and then trying to follow up with what we can all do about it. That structure is really important in just being truthful, getting your message across, and trying not to leave the person with just reinforcing that despair, or that we don't stand for anything except for we're against that. Anyway, so that's kind of what, we're talking about in terms of strategy. So kind of want to open it up to discussion. There's already been a lot of really good ideas and observations about how we talk to people and what we say. So with that slide under our belts, it would be good to return to that and see what you all think and have to suggest.
And also just to keep in mind, it's some guidelines, and we won't do all those things in every conversation, but it's something to think about, right? In having a conversation, is there a value that I'm hearing that I can recognize that will move this conversation to a positive place? And in this conversation, is there a positive action that comes to me that's doable, that I can propose, right? Others. And we're going to give you a couple examples that may not do all those things, but of, how to have a conversation, the kind when we hear something that we all hear maybe a lot. Okay, Susan.
I think two things that could be helpful would be to bring it down to the local level and how that affects us. And as horrible as everything is on the national level, we don't get to vote for a president. Hopefully, we'll be voting in 28. We don't even know for sure. It's so bad now. But that there's a lot of other things that we can do to make things better here, and also that as kind of a blue state, we can model to other states that it's still possible to, improve things during that time and not have to wait just for the next big national election. And the other thing that I don't know how well this works, but I feel like being truthful and saying we don't always all agree with every Democratic leader. So if someone's going to go into a rant about, a senator or something that did something stupid or capitulated or said something wrong or whatever, we are willing to criticize that. We are not just like sheep that are like, oh, we're all united behind this one thing. So if they, if they start to go into a rant about any particular person, or whether they're local or national or whoever, just to say, to be honest, I don't agree with that person all the time either. And that would show that we're, more forthright.
And to again, to flip to the positive, and I don't agree with this person. The person who really is inspiring me now is this person, and here's why. Right? Which again can get you to a shared value that's a positive thing. And that, how do you elect somebody who does inspire you? Right? Great. Okay, Graham.
Susan mentioned local and what we can do locally. It was a wonderful thing on Monday night at the school board to see two women sworn in. We haven't had that in a long time, and they were two Democrats. And that took a lot of you on tonight, Joanna, Mark, Susan, all of you. That effort was tremendous. Everything you're talking about went into that. And this was the result.
And the neighborhood leader program.
Yes, NLP was.
And I also want to shout out to Maria, who organized dozens of indivisible volunteers to canvass in North Albany.
So using that as a model going ahead to next May, we had a good, this was a good tune-up for.
Yeah,
And what's happening, we've had so many honking waves, and they're in Lebanon, and they're having these little, ones in Sweet Home too. I mean, it's really heartening. And the conversations that are going on, everybody we're talking about tonight was out there yesterday. I mean, they had two people that, oh, I don't like my Democratic representative, but I'm here, because I feel kind of connected to this whole thing. And so.
okay. So Graham, what a perfect segue. We're going to do 2 role plays, and the first one does take place at a honkin' wave.
Good.
So, okay, hang on. We'll spotlight the people who are going to do this. Okay, so. Okay, I forgot my sign. I have an invisible sign. We're in Albany. We're on the street. It's Friday afternoon, about 4:30. We're at the Honkin' Wave. I'm Nancy. Mark is not Mark. He's this other guy, and I don't recognize him. So I go over to Mark and say, "Hey, hi, I'm Nancy.
Oh, hi,
You are?
I'm Lance.
Hey, Lance, it's nice to see you. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, and I see you have a sign that says now you're pissed.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, I think we are. And so, can I just ask what brought you out today?
Well, I guess maybe finally getting enough piss to make a sign and come out. I went to my first Pride event and I got a button at the Dems place and they told me about this thing that you guys do.
Wow. Well, it's super great to see you here. So tell me a little more, like pissed about what?
Well, kind of where we're at and where we seem to be going. I don't, everybody sees the news and can't believe it gets worse every day. You think it can't get worse, and then you see the next thing and it seems worse, and nobody's doing anything about it.
So I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm gonna agree that the news is bad and every day there's something that just gut punches you, right? But I'm gonna point out that you're standing next to me and you're doing something about it, actually. And, I just think that's pretty terrific. So, have you ever been to a kind of street protest before?
No, never.
And so, how are you feeling about this one?
Most of the people seem to be pretty happy. A couple of things flipping the bird, but not too many.
Yeah. And I think sometimes even those people that flip you off, they give you kind of jolt of energy too, right?
Everybody shouts.
Yeah, and all the people who are on the street with you, right?
Hmm.
So, I tend to think that while standing on the street won't fix everything, that one of the reasons I'm here is because I agree with you. I'm frustrated by what's going on, certainly in Washington, D.C., not so much in Salem, where I feel like people do a better job of representing our values, not everything, but better, but certainly in DC. And I guess I feel, and I come out to these protests because I feel like the more of us that stand up and say, wait a minute, this is just not okay with me. No more business as usual, right? Let's like call it as we see it and let's do something about it. How do you think that?
I mean, I really wasn't sure what to expect. I suppose if more people did it, more people might pay attention.
And so let me ask you, thinking about, so we're here every Friday, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, from 4 to 6. Can you think of any people you know who aren't here who you might get out?
Perhaps I could ask some people. Yeah.
So, just think about, we've got what, like 30 people here right now? If we
Yeah.
all got a couple more people to come, 90 people next week,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And then, et cetera, right? So imagine 2 weeks from now, 200 people on the street.
More signs and more noise.
More noise. And, so I feel like we can't do it individually alone, but together we really can make a change.
I guess you're right.
And so I hope I see you next week. And in the meantime, you said that you were at Pride. That's so cool. That was so much fun. And you went to the Dems table. So maybe you already got this bookmark, but I want to be sure you have it because it's got that scan code on it. Yeah, and that goes to our website, which is amazingly up to date. And it'll also link you to our social media and it will tell you about any action that's going on. So,
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
Like the thing we're doing here. So,
like the thing we're doing here. And next month, we're going to actually have a picnic and pie auction, which is pure fun. So it's sort of like all the people that are here, plus more people eating pie, eating hot dogs and hamburgers, and raising money by auctioning off pies.
an
It's
auction. Okay.
so if you go on the website, you can get the date and the location. And if you don't, I can tell you again next week when I see you here.
Okay.
Okay, super great to meet you. Thanks for coming out. Okay. Okay, feedback, you guys. Come on, we put out, give us some feedback. Leslie.
You're still muted.
I got off video and got on. One thing that I'm going to try to train myself, and so I'm going to say it out to the rest of people, is somewhere along the way to convince him to sign into our website is to say, and then you can tell us what matters to you. To always make it seem like we want to hear what they have to say, rather than just sort of seeming like we've got a message to deliver. We
Yeah.
want their message.
I thought I asked him what was on his mind.
I'm not saying you didn't. This is my way of reminding myself what I need to do.
But I'm agreeing with you. So I meant to. That was part of the role play. And if I didn't do it, my bad. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Leslie, were you intending to say people could give feedback on the website or to you?
Well, if we're asking them, people who aren't connected with the party now, one way to ask them to make some kind of contact is to say, we need to hear from them.
Okay.
Great. And that's, if you look at your neighborhood leader script, we try to start with, that we want to give good information and hear what's on people's minds. Good. Thank you
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
reminding us. Others. Okay.
Well, I'll just quickly say we've had the same kind of experience actually on the street on Fridays. And we've talked to people who do express interest and have followed up with our Lynn County Democrats. So it works.
Ruth,
Sorry, I can't find my raise hand character, but that's okay. To me, this kind of encounter is fairly, I mean, the conversation you two had, it was great. I really liked the various, the camaraderie, the kind of openness. But I'm thinking we need to find the more contentious, the more people that aren't going to show up at a rally yet. Are we going to, at some point in time, talk about strategies where we somehow we move ourselves into situations where we're more likely to meet people who are leaning a little bit further away from us?
well, yes, and we're doing 2 tonight. We'll keep going, but you know what? I think part of what we're saying is here's Mark, who's never come out, right? And here he is now.
Lance.
Lance, I'm sorry. Here's Lance, who's never come out, and here he is. And I want to appreciate him for coming out, right? Because he's already taken the first step, right?
I totally agree. We
I
need to
want
nurture
to,
that guy.
I want to reflect that it matters, right? That his coming out on the street makes a difference. And I want him to think in terms of who can he talk to and encourage to step up, right? So definitely there are a lot of conversations we're going to have, and I think one message we're trying to convey is wherever you are, there's work you can do that's actually super important work.
The tools Carrie was outlining, the steps for having an effective conversation can apply anywhere. And we just picked this setting because it shows somebody who cares. Like we started at the very top, we want to talk to people who seem to care. Somebody shows up at a protest or somebody comes to one of our meetings or somebody wants to be a neighborhood leader, they're taking that step, and that's when you can move forward. And the other goal is to get as many people active as possible. Let's have that pyramid effect and get to that 3.5 or 4% across the whole country, right?
Okay.
And I actually see this interaction or meeting people at protests, whether they're, especially the ones who are just coming out of their shell, as a very safe context to practice really good communication skills with them and keep them engaged. And then that sets you up for maybe challenging yourself for more difficult context.
Yeah, and maybe part of this is think about when you go to an action, do you talk to your friends or do you find somebody you've never met and talk to them? And just, to make us conscious that, bringing people in, that's a good strategy too, right? Because it's always fun to talk to our friends at stuff. But, and just appreciating people who we've never seen before.
Anybody who remembers the first time they came to a Lynn County Democrats meeting will know Nancy came and talked to you.
I know, as I say, I've become my mother. I talk to people in the supermarket. Okay. So you guys, you're a tough audience. I can tell you wanted us to start out with our MAGA relatives, but we're not there yet. We're going to work in that direction. And so we're trying to do things where in situations that we're going to be, and how do we address people's hesitancy or discouragement and keep those people with us. So we're starting with that. I can tell we're going to have to do tougher ones next time. So next up is Steve, one of our favorite neighborhood leaders, knocks on his neighbor's door and that would be Carrie. It's now, and he's just checking in with her to see how she's doing.
You didn't hear the knock?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, knock, knock, knock.
Oh, thank you. Hey, hi. Oh, hey, I know you.
Hi, Carrie. How are you today?
Good. Oh my God, do we have an election?
No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
I just felt like I would come around during the non-election season and start a quick conversation with neighbors, just see how people are doing. So my lead question is, I don't hear or see John Henry. So where have you got him stashed?
Papa, he's right, John Henry. Oh,
Oh, there he is. Okay.
you didn't even practice that. That just
Yeah,
happened.
John Henry is on the job.
Yeah, yawning. Yes, yeah. So
Yeah, so I just swung by, want to ask, what are you seeing in the news? What's got you worried? Is there something specific that's affecting you and the family? Any topic like that.
well, I know you don't have all day, so because I could go on and on. Yeah, a lot. It's heavy. I think one of the things I'm finding most that I keep being aggravated about is that this feeling, and from talking to friends and family, that a lot of the working people have become totally dissatisfied with the Democrats. And, we know that a lot of them were persuaded and by Trump and have gone over to that side. And that just, it really worries me. And it feels like not only are we losing the working class, but we're not getting them back. So I don't know. That's just something that has been on my mind a lot recently.
Well, it's a topic at in my extended family as well. And I think most families in the middle, let's just say, or families where people are working for wages, they are feeling squeezed. There's no dancing around it. They're feeling squeezed, and that they're having to give up some of their standard of living just to get by, or you know they see their brother or the guy down the street that seems to be doing better than they are, and they're frustrated by that. And I think those feelings are real. And yeah, so yeah, I think it's a real topic. But is there anything else?
Well, I just like what are the Democrats doing about it? I mean, it just feels like there's, there are people out here suffering, try, like you say, just, working hard, trying to get by, and it's getting harder and harder. And it's like we're not hearing anything at all, or I just don't know what they're doing. It's not very visible.
you know Sometimes I have to step back a little bit on some topics. And I think where the the democratic value, it's about providing opportunities for everyone. And that means you have to make an effort to help those who aren't doing very well. Maybe it's an education issue. Maybe it's a disability issue. Maybe they're just poor and never could get a leg up. There's a lot of reasons. And I think Democrats are sympathetic to that. And so I think that's one of our democratic values. We want opportunity for everyone. Do you buy into that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I totally agree. I'm just like say, I don't know what the Democratic Party and Democratic politicians are doing.
Well, and I would say to that, I I think the Biden administration passed a number of helpful initiatives and laws that were good for the middle class, that were good for the working class. Um, And what I think we've seen is a lot of those things will never come to fruition in the Republican administration because they're canceling. They cancel contracts, that provide jobs. They find a reason, oh, that was a waste of money, so let's cancel that contract. And, that's unfortunate. But I think Democrats did do some things. But yeah, we haven't done a good job of telling working class people what we did for them and why they're maybe not feeling it at their pocketbook right now.
Hmm.
You think I'm on the right track? Is that helping when you talk to your family?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and now you remind me of some of those initiatives during the Biden administration. That's helpful. I think it's just kind of all wrapped up in the frustration of the moment that it feels like there's no. I just don't know who's fight. When I talk to friends and family, how do I convince them that anybody is fighting for them?
And what I would sometimes again I don't focus on a single piece of legislation or any single thing, but what's in the Democratic platform? And I had this question before, so I did some searching. Democrats in Oregon laid out a platform as thoughtfully as they could. They had 9 major articles in their platform. Guess what the first one was? Labor and the economy.
Mm.
And what's the first, a piece of the first sentence? Workers form the bedrock of our economy.
Mm.
I mean, Democrats could not be clearer on what's in the front of their mind and where they want to take us. And I think if you contrast that with what the Republican platform has, where you will see nothing about working class people, you will see mostly about how the well-to-do can become more well-to-do. And I think those elements of the actual written platforms tell you the story. And in the heat of campaigns, some of that gets lost, and it definitely got lost the last time. And I think the choice will be startlingly clear into the future that if you're a working class person, if you're working for wages, the Democrats are out to help you one way or another. It may not seem like it, but they're trying to help everyone. And they may not hit your button, but they're helping a lot of people. So
Yeah.
there you have it.
Well, that's really helpful. That's something I can share, and let people know, when this comes up. I think that's going to be very valuable to me to be able to share. It should be nice if we could hear more from our representatives saying those same things. But I don't know how to get them to,
Well, I think the actions all of us can take, and I know you're a voter, and you voted consistently in the past. But as you talk to friends and relatives, that whole issue of voting is really important. If they're feeling disenfranchised, my vote doesn't matter, both parties are the same, all that stuff. Well, the parties are different and the policies are different, and their vote will matter, especially in local elections. And we all have opportunities to talk to friends and neighbors, and just those conversations are important actions that we can all take. Open conversations with our neighbors and friends is just good, good, good. And then, the final thing any of us can do is we all can write a letter or send a text or write an email to our elected representatives. So I'll stop jabbering at that point and let you
No,
get
that's
back to.
been great, Steve. You made me feel a lot better, and it makes me feel less hopeless and like I don't, you give me a few things that I think I can actually use. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. So thanks. It's good to see you. And
Well, and if you get
I'm sorry that I thought you were only here because there was an election.
Yeah, and if you're down the street and see me, bent over pulling weeds in the garden, go ahead and just open the gate and come on in. I'll chatter anytime.
Okay, do you have any more peaches left?
Peaches are gone, pears are on though.
Okay, all right, well, I might come by if you have a few extra.
I seem like I have a whole tree full.
Okay. Good. Well, thanks. I appreciate it, Steve. I really do. It's good to see you, and I really appreciate the conversation.
Take care.
All right, see ya.
Thank you, guys. Great work. Maria, do you have your hand up or I'm gonna actually one thing I would say, Suzanne, I'll get you in a sec. I would have said, and this came up when we were talking about it in the team. So much of our communication to our representatives and senators is reactive, right? Something's happening, and so that's what we write on. But it's not clear to me that we repeatedly say to them, we want you to work for working people. Working people are suffering. Citizens United, and of course, the big horrible bill and its precursor have widened the gap between the very wealthy and working people. And we need to shrink that. And so this is what I care about, number one on my list. Because if we don't say that, they get no calls from people who are saying, do more for working people. And it doesn't show up on their horizon. Suzanne, and then Maria, if you want to.
Well, I just want to jump in. So yes, that was part of the rehearsal, but I didn't get it in tonight. Sorry.
Suzanne,
Yes. I was going to say that I'm fairly new to all of this, and you are all very experienced. And I have found that if I jump in with party platform, think we're listening. In my various volunteering things, I kind of feel people out and see, and if they're going to go, total MAGA, I stop. But if they kind of go, yeah, a little nervous, what's bothering you? Yeah, okay. And then we can talk about that. And I even had a Republican, very much a MAGA person. We were watching the election returns, and I said, "Who can I ask who you voted for?" And they said, "Yeah, Trump." And I said, "Why?" Because I'm worried about immigration. And I said, I am too. And he kind of looked at me, and I said, because I told him, I said, I'm a Democrat, but I'm worried about that too. I said, I'm worried they're going to catch people who haven't done anything wrong. And he said, oh no, they're only going after criminals. And I said, well, how are they going to know that? I said, if you're a good criminal, you can hide. And he stopped. And he said, one of the teachers at the school, and he got real quiet. And I think sometimes you just have to give people one little piece of information and let it roll from there. And it's not everybody politically involved. They're barely paying attention. They're doing good to pay the bills. So that's my 2 cents worth.
excellent. And I'm going to give you feedback that at least when you're telling the story, you didn't do body language of like getting all steamed up when he said that. And
well, I didn't though.
No, and I'm saying that's, great job because then somebody can hear what you're saying instead of just like, okay, I see where this person's going, right?
Right. It was a good conversation.
Yeah. Maria, then Ruth.
Yeah, I think my feedback, it goes along the lines of Suzanne, but I think my feedback for Steve is that I think at this particular moment in time, to speak generically, well, Democrats care about people, our platforms do this and that. People are craving for objective things. So let them open up on issues and try to respond to the issue they're bringing up. I think people are fed up with the things that we used to coalesce people around us to help them understand the values of the party. And there was a moment in time that people were open to listen to that. I think this moment in time is a moment of issues. So what's going to bridge us, it will start with issues rather than the philosophy of the party, the values, the principles. I think we need to be more specific.
So if I say to you, oh, Maria, I'm just worried that the Democrats really have lost the working class. What are you saying to me?
First thing I would ask, what are your concerns, and why do you feel that the Democrats are losing the working class? Where is the evidence that I'm missing there, that I may be missing, and help me understand?
And that is good, because I would say to you, even under Biden, the wealth gap continues to grow, right?
Right.
And then that lets us get into a conversation about values and what causes that and
Right.
how we can call that out. Thank you. Thank you. Good point. Ruth.
So this is not exactly the feedback, maybe that you are wanting, but you know, rather than, so I really want to reach out to the neighbors in my neighborhood, and rather than going on each individual door, I was thinking about like hosting an event like around in November, like a year after after the election, and doing something similar, but as a group effort. But I know that some people have already done that. They've been hosting things at their home, and I was just wondering if there's anybody out there who can maybe contact me directly and just maybe give me some information on how they did that, if they sent letters or knocked on doors or called, and just, more information on how to best go about that.
Maria, you're up again. Muted.
Yeah, it takes forever to click. There is if you're not aware, Ruth and others, there is a series of training that's called 1 Million Rising that has had two trainings online, and there's a third coming up. And that's basically involving these small groups of discussion of education. And there are several techniques or several, it's like a manual of how to make those things happen. I'll be more than happy to share, to send the links to everyone. It is an excellent series. There's a lot of information, including from sociologists, historians, people familiar with authoritarianism and resistance. So maybe you find stuff in there that will be helpful. I'll be more than happy to forward to you or forward to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
And I see also the Hickmans have said connect with them because they did.
Okay.
And I will say, in my experience, if you just send invitations to people who, may not really know you, it's less likely they'll come than if you knock on at least a couple of doors and invite people that way.
Okay, good to
Even
know. Good to
even
know.
if
I
it's
appreciate that.
just to drop off an invitation, right? Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm your
Okay.
neighbor. I'm having a gathering here. I wanted to give you the invitation. I'd love it if you would come.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. And the Hickmans, I'm looking for your contact information in the chat. I just have your names.
Okay. So anyone else? Gretchen. Unmute.
Still muted.
The only thing that these role plays are great, and I'm learning a lot from them. I would just say one thing that happened in the second one is that when Steve started to respond to Carrie, I was still stalled on hearing what Carrie was saying about how frustrated she was and what and I felt like it wasn't until for me, if I don't feel like I'm heard, that my frustration is really understood, I can't move on to the next fix or the conversation about it. And so I just want to put in a word for really a significant acknowledging what the other person has told you about where they are.
Yeah, no, and that's funny because, it goes back to that slide that when I first read that about dismissive of concerns about immigration and crime, I thought, well, people shouldn't, that's bogus issues, but it's what you're saying. They may have bad information, but being dismissive of them having the concern doesn't get you anywhere. Right? You
Yeah.
have to, I mean, that you're saying you first have to acknowledge
So
that
true.
they're concerned, right?
Yeah, because I couldn't hear what Steve was trying to tell me to fix it until I really felt like there was that connection.
Right. This is good. Thank you. And, so we are volunteers and we do these things and, I think our theory is whether we do the perfect job or not, it just gives people some sort of, oh, I would do that and I would do this other thing. So, it's all useful. So, thank you all. And so I think next time we'll just keep developing this. How do we talk about issues and maybe come up with a couple of harder ones, and we'll see what else is going on. I did want to just, we always do the good of the order. And this is what we have. If you're in Benton County, that means this Thursday, right, Carrie? Hey, Carrie, you
Yeah.
there?
Yes, I was nodding and speaking to my muted thing, sorry.
Okay, so this Thursday, Val Hoyle's staff, we've talked about issues. This is your chance. As we've been talking about, there are honkin' waves every week in Albany, Lebanon, and also Yes in Sweet Home. But easiest, you can find just about everything on Mobilize. I don't know if people know that Wednesday is the annual peace Hiroshima and Nagasaki Memorial in Corvallis. It's very moving. There's a ceremony at Riverfront Park, and then people walk down usually to the bridge. Not sure how that works this year. And there's a lighted flotilla on the river, which is pretty moving. And the Corvallis Museum is having a display at the same time that I think goes through maybe the 10th. But Family Peace Day, they'll have activities on Saturday. And then Sarah Finger McDonald and Ben Bowman are going to be in Corvallis August 16th for a town hall. And then Okay, as I said to Lance in our role play, the big fun is coming up for both parties. You know, go to one of these, they're always a blast. Benton County, the 23rd, and Lynn County in September. And then save the date, Festival Latino. You can go to Festival Latino, then you can go to the Democrats' picnic and pie auction. Big day. And then the final thing is, I always include this. Just keep in mind that Cliff Bentz may happily is not our state representative, but his votes are hurting all Oregonians. And he can use to hear from all Oregonians about, yeah, you know, you're voting to pull funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's going to go really well for your constituents. You know, if he doesn't hear from people, he thinks people are either passive or okay with it. And September 7th, our next Zoom. So these will go out. You will have all of that. Thanks to those of you who came and who sat it through. Any final words from anyone? So, you know, tough times, right? And every day, virtually, there's something in the news that's enough to knock you sideways. And I did not go to the live part 2 of 1 Million Rising, but I watched the recording. And I actually was going to play for you in the 2 minutes before the end of it. One of the trainers, Ash, who's just great, gives her final remarks. And she says, you know, we're going to win because it's in our DNA. And if you read history, you know that we win in the end as long as we keep the faith. And I think we all know that's true. And we, the neighborhood leader team, super appreciates people, you all, for joining us, because we reaffirm that we're not going passively. We're going to resist, and we are going to turn this ship around, and we're going to get our country back. And by virtue of doing this hard work, we're going to call it as it is, right? The wealth gap, Citizens United, our ridiculous lack of health care, the whole business, right? We've got our vision, and we are going to succeed. So thank you all, and hopefully see you at a picnic and pie auction, and then see you again in a month.